Hello, everyone. Welcome to the new episode of Professionals Unplugged. I am your host, Utkarsh, and today we have Ligia with us. Ligia, thank you so much for joining in.
Thank you, Utkarsh. I appreciate the opportunity.
So, let's start with a very basic question. Can you please introduce yourself to our audience, like who you are, what work you do, anything you want us to know about you?
All right. So, I am a business strategist. I focus on giving founders and business owners most unfair advantage to win in their markets. So, these unfair advantages are more than words, are more than actions. They're actually worth millions. An example would be, for instance, getting clarity on product market fit, or having the best positioning so that one can serve the consumers, the customers they want to serve, and having that wedge, that entry, small entry into a market that allows them to build. And why would smaller companies need an early advantage? And obviously, beyond the fact that they need to win in their markets and build a company, is because they need to have enough money to be able to do it. So um, that's what I do.
That's really a crisp and a short intro that you have given us. Before jumping into the unfair advantage, let's talk about your journey first. Okay, so how did you come up to this role, and what was the main reason behind you choosing this role, or has this role chosen you?
Okay, so right now I have my own company. I work with clients, but let me tell you how I started. So when I finished my graduate program, I was very tempted to go into academia because I love talking the way I talk to you. Ideas change people, change the world. But I also wanted to have my own perspective on a lived experience. So when 10 years after I graduated, I actually taught, I could bring that to the students and I could stand behind my words. This is what I've seen and I experienced, right? So my first job took me all over the world selling for a pharma startup. And it completely changed the way I see business. And I'm glad I had that experience early because how people negotiated in Egypt, where I went, or in the Netherlands, was different from how people negotiated in Japan or in the US. And it created in me this desire to understand how people make decisions, seeing through multiple lenses: cultural, emotional, business, how people actually sell and buy, and what fears they have. And especially it made me look at the distinction between what people say and what people actually do. So I took this with me later when I worked in different other parts of businesses, for instance, in marketing and consulting and startups. I just wanted to understand the business from various perspectives so I would know what is necessary in order for a business to develop revenue and sustain revenue.
I think that's a very good thing that you mentioned. Talking about the point that you mentioned, like every different country has their own way of negotiation, right? So can you just enlighten us, like how different it is in the different part of the world? If you can just give us few example.
Well, this is something that I would say I took and applied uh, to business in general, because every human, and we do business with humans who may be born somewhere else, would bring a certain perspective to business, certain expectations of how they wanted to be respected, how they wanted to be heard. A very important part of business is a matter of status, where how that person perceives that their role is in and doing business. I'm just saying, I took all of these things to heart because I truly believe that building a business means putting the customer with all its human needs and fears and desires at the center. So I think we need, as business builders, to best understand, and I'll give you examples later when we talk about clients, but to best understand what that client wants, what that client needs, which are two different things. So understanding the humans that we serve and understanding ourselves, I think, is extremely important when building a business.
Correct. And especially that point that you mentioned, like sometimes client want something else, but they need something else, right? Wants and need
That's right.
doesn't need to go on one day pay.
Or they may say they want something else, and then it's important to have these conversations and to test, to run small tests to understand what is the reality behind what another human says. I don't think that people try to confuse intentionally. I think that often they may not have it.
Yeah, I think I totally agree with you on this point. It's completely depends on the way the clients
Mm,
wants and what their needs are, right? Talking about
that's right.
your journey now, how do you deal with clients and what type of clients do you serve?
Okay. So right now I work with both solopreneurs and small business owners and founders. Solopreneurs, some of them who launched with me, who started from zero, who got to 500K in sales and now are getting to their first million by the end of the year. With small businesses, with founders, often I work with those who are stuck under or at 500K. And the work we need to do in order to get to $1 million, which is not always easy, is to, again, understand the customer, understand the market, to understand what is possible. And I start with clients, I always ask two deceptively simple questions that I think everybody knows. Who is a client you serve? And what is a change you want them to see? Or what is a change they expect to experience working with you? And I'm saying that these are simple, apparently simple, but I very rarely see an answer in the strategy, long-term strategy that customers, my clients have about their customers, and not having clarity of a longer term strategy that allows you to constantly adapt, but within the framework of that strategy, I think it's a very big problem because it's like you run as fast as you can in the opposite direction that you want to go. And I want to give you an example of what I mean by this. But before, I just want to share with you how I see entrepreneurship and what I bring to my clients. Um, I see entrepreneurship and business building as a game. And I see it as a game, not as in the sense and that is funny or but it's exciting. It gives you clarity and feedback in the moment. So a game has constraints, rules, and a clock, like a deadline, right? So the constraints in a game are your market because you're serving this specific customer and not a different one. It's your unique advantage. Hopefully you got it, you know what it is, because it allows you to compete with other people and not try to be everybody, everything to everybody. Then the rules, right? You have an overcrowded market. There are certain rules that you pretty much cannot bend. You need to work around. Now you have a niche. There are other rules, right? And then you have a clock, basically a deadline. Like you need to make enough money to sustain your business before the time runs out, because then game over, right? So my role is to support my clients with strategy that helps them use their constraints to their advantage so they win against the house. Now, I'm using this intentionally, not that the universe is a casino, but it could be in a way. But basically, how do you win enough times so that you make sure that you actually build a business serving the people that matter to you in a way that matters to you? Because that's why you got into business, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so let me give you the example that I promised. I was busy building a startup, and after serious research, we landed on the ideal customer. It was somebody who really had the need proven. It had the budget to pay, it had a willingness to pay, and had a desperation in time to pay now, not later. So they already started to purchase. Every time you start campaigns on Facebook, on Google, it takes time to ramp up. So the CEO decided to bring a friend of his who was a consultant, And he took a look and said, no, we're leaving money on the table. Let's open it to the world, right? So let's open it to the world means let's sell it to everybody. But that requires a different strategy, okay? Within that strategy, different positioning, words that are diluted so that they speak to everybody. So, I mean, can you imagine what the result was?
It it helped you in growing the sales, like when you opened it to
So,
everyone.
so I think this is I think the issue because when you start when you do a shift like this, as you open it to everybody in the first moment, there's more sales, right?
Yeah.
But
True.
what happens is you just wait a little bit. This is why I'm talking long-term strategy. So in the first month, more sales, everybody is excited. Yeah, we were right to throw away the book. Okay, the research. But then what happened is the consumers who knew we were speaking to them were confused. They just didn't know if it is for me, for them. Then the people who purchased to see how it is had a chance to use it for a month. And then there's like, well, you promised me results, but because they did not have that intense need, because it was very expensive for them, right? They're like, I'm going to return this. This is not doing what it promised, right? So obviously, in a few months, we reset the clock on that initial momentum. So that's why I always say beware of tactical wins in the absence of a long-term strategy, because it's the surest way to lose your market, you
Correct.
know?
And how do you deal with such setbacks when suppose some client is coming to you in such a situations, right? So how do you deal in such situation, or how do you frame the strategies for them?
Well, let's say we work together on strategies because it has to be always aligned with who they are as a business, as people, and who their clients are. But what I think really helps is to have clarity
Mhm.
clarity on the consumer, clarity on what is this action meant to do. Let's go dig a little deeper. Is this right for this consumer? Why? What does this consumer need? And go a little bit deeper. And I think as business owners, we all have blind spots because sometimes we get some wins from some tactical stuff, like we put a post on, let's say, LinkedIn, got a lot of results. People react, but we don't know why they're so excited. And we think they're excited about the product. They may be excited just because we agreed with some of their issues, right? This is not how you measure the results. So I think just being able to have deeper and deeper clarity on what the client needs and what you're doing to satisfy that need. It seems quite simple words, but it's not. And that resolves a lot of the problems. But let me give you a simpler way to deal with some apparent big difficulties, right? I had a client who had a new service that was perceived as extremely expensive by their clients, and she was unable to sell them. So this has a simpler perceptual solution. So I said, why don't you cut this service into one is a simpler first stage. It is cheaper for the consumer. They are testing it, but what this is going to do is going to actually surface the real issue that they're dealing with. But then they will naturally say, well, can we do this? This is important. We cannot just drop it here, which is exactly what happened. So then she went to resolve naturally the second more complex issue, which was the issue actually. And then if you put together the payment for the first part and the price for the second one, together was more expensive than what she initially uh, sold them. But now, because the consumer led this inquiry, because they wanted it, they understood it, then it was clear to them what is being resolved. The need was very clear through doing. Then, everybody was happy and there was a lot of satisfaction. So this is not as difficult. Again, you just have to understand where the resistance of the consumer is.
Correct. And now talking about the challenges. So what are the biggest challenges that you face in your day-to-day life?
Do you mean me as a business owner of my own, or me as working with clients?
You as a
Because
business
there
owner of your own.
well, I think I probably have the same challenges as my clients, which is, can I communicate very clearly and very briefly to them what needs to be done in a way that they also agree? Because I'm not doing it for them, we're doing it together. So I think we're coming to a time, including using AI, where we see that communication, even in the prompts, people are selling prompts, right? Communicating something very clearly gets you where you want. So since I'm such a big, a believer in strategy, I would say that strategy starts with clear thinking and clear communication. And if we can overcome all the challenges that come from not being clear, I think we already ahead. I want to give you a ridiculous example. A friend of mine wrote me a note the other day and she asked me something. And instead of answering directly, yes, I will do this, I gave her an example of, yeah, this and that. And she didn't understand. She wrote back to me. So we found ourselves for a very simple thing, exchanging 5 texts. So taking this to the level of business, time truly matters. We don't have time to waste. We need to use time properly. So I would say one of the biggest challenges is stop and think before you make a decision. Stop and think before you communicate. Stop
Mm.
and think how your post fits into your biggest strategy. What is your plan here? So obviously, I'm not saying that you have to worry about that every second of your day in your personal life, though it's a good idea to work with some strategy. But this is, I think, quite important to resolve in business.
Correct. Now, talking about the stories, although you have already shared a lot of stories with us, but is there any particular story as well that you like to share with us?
So I think all business stories, all human stories are stories about strategy.
Yeah.
How do we actually get to win another day so we continue to live and win? So I just want to give you a story that I'm reminded of. It's not a business story, it's a mythical story. It's a story from the Odyssey.
Mhm.
Ulysses goes and knows he's going to fight the Cyclops, the monsters, one-eyed monsters in the cave. And he knows what's going to happen once he blinds the monster, right? He's going to ask the help of the other brothers, other Cyclops. So once he blinds the Cyclops asks, so what is your name? And he says, my name is no one. I know you knew this story. And then, so taken to the larger perspective is again, think of your story in terms of what do I need to go where I want to go so that I can do what really matters to me and I can help the people that I care about.
Right. I think that's a very inspiring story as well, the one that we had. And it's very important to apply all these things in a real life as well, in order to
Mhm.
understand and learn from these mythical stories and try to have a point from of our own as well, right?
That's right. That's right.
Now, talking about the advice that you follow in your life and any advice that you like to share with us.
Yeah. So the advice that I want to mention here is a two-part advice that I take for myself every day and when I start a project or when I work with businesses. The first part is, as I mentioned before, make sure you live another day. So that means don't run out of cash and protect your health. So I want to give you a quote from Tacitus, which is a Roman historian who lived 2000 years ago, born in year 55 this century. So he says, he who fights and runs away might turn and live another day, but he who dies in the battle might actually never rise and fight another day. So basically, try to not run out of money, which means run out of energy, means run out of faith. because you do want to um, actually, as I said, serve the people that matter to you, bring your own mark into the world. The second part of it is mind your values. I think when we come into very hard times, it's tempting to forget the values that define us and the values that define the business that we bring into the world. And we think, well, look at other people winning. How can I do the same? Sometimes we think maybe I should copy their methods, but those methods are for their clients and not for our clients. So I'm always inspired by Robert Frost's poem, who says, I took the road less traveled,
Never mind.
and that made all the difference. So, if you want to do something that matters to you, have a strategy, but remind yourself every day why you do it and who you're helping.
Right. I think these
Mm.
are really very good and deep strategies or advices that you just shared with us. And
Mhm.
they have a very deep meaning, especially that poem from the Robert Frost, The Road Less Taken By, right? And
Mhm.
all depends upon our perspective, like how we see the world and how different we want us to be from the other part of the world, right?
Right, being different requires not only knowing yourself, but having courage, because it's really very hard to be vulnerable and say, "This is what I stand for." It's so much easier to hide behind a movement, or there are trends in the world, everybody does it, and it feels like we're riding a wave and enthusiasm. But, from what I've noticed, it doesn't take you to where you want to go if you have a unique business.
Correct. Last but not the least, what is your dream right now?
Well, I think that entrepreneurship, I always thought so, is what dreams are made of. So I would like to see more people, more founders step up and choose to resolve problems in their communities, in our world, using their own means and creativity, using entrepreneurship. Um, I also think, related to this, that I would like to see earlier in schools and high school, in college, I would like to see systems that are in place where that allows students to test and accept that entrepreneurship is a valued path, as opposed to plan B, or setting up a gig, or doing it on the side. And I know, because 10 years ago I had a little business for kids that were between 6 and 9. It was called Kids Business, and the level of creativity, the level of understanding their peers to whom they were selling, was amazing. They inspired me. That's why I'm saying understanding humans is the best way to run a business. There are tactics you need to understand. Is, of course, they didn't understand digital marketing, sure, but they could use their phones in order to create a little campaign. So that's the important thing. And now I'm mentoring some college student, and they tell me that they're trying to figure out their career path. And when we talk about what would you like to do, they are excited. They say, "Oh, I'd like to try this. I really care about this, but I'm really afraid that my peers, my friends, are going to think that I'm ridiculous. So I better not do it." So I want to make sure that people feel that entrepreneurship is an extraordinary path of the self and worth trying.
Right. I think we wish you all the best for your dreams and hope for a lot of success for you. And it was really a very inspiring session for me as well, to know how the
Oh,
strategies work and to understand the business point of view as well. So thank you so much, Lisa. It was really amazing.
oh, thank you so much for giving this opportunity. I watch your other videos with so many interesting stories that I was quite inspired. So, speaking of stories and the human appeal, I think this is something you do that is most important.
Thank you so much, Lisa.